Welcome once more on this Sabbath day, right? On Thursday, it was the Tekufa, right? On the 20th, it was the Tekufa Thursday. And on the 21st, on Friday, it was New Year for us who observe the Tekufa is marking the end of and the beginning of a new year. The end of the year, we observe the Tekufa, and it follows that the following day is the beginning of a new year. So we are starting to count down to Passover. On the 14th, today is the 2nd, so on the 14th will be Passover, and on the 15th will be Feast of Unleavened Bread. There are so many calendars out there that are used by believers, and we don't seem to have come to oneness in the calendar. But I'm always praying that may Yah reveal to us His true days. May He teach us to count our days so that we may be in line with Him when it comes to His worship. Beloved, the calendar, right, whose basic unit is the day, is very pivotal in coming to the true worship of Yahweh. If we don't have the correct calendar, there is no way we can come to the fullness of the truth of worship. And so this is a truth that we require as any other truth, be it the truth of the Sabbath, the truth of the set-apart names, the truth of the revealed nature. All those truths, they are of the same value when it comes to worship. So is the calendar as well. Because if we don't have the correct calendar, there is no way we can come to the true worship of Yahweh. And remember, especially the Shabbats, the annual festivals, we arrive to them by counting our days according to the beginning of the year. And so if we don't have the correct beginning of the year, it follows that all the festivals that will come in that year, they are misplaced. They are in the wrong place. And Yah will not leave us in that era. And I believe that in these days, as He is restoring His truth to His people, He is still also going to reveal His calendar. To our forefathers, He says, for you, this is the beginning of the year or the beginning of the months. So He was pointing to them to a particular date, to a particular time, where He was saying, this marks the beginning of the months. But again, in this very same scripture, the word tekufa has been translated as end of the year, right? End of the year. So straight from scripture, using the revealed truths that are there, and if we use all the truth that is there, I am persuaded that Yah will continue to reveal and strengthen us on that which is truthful. And so, we are continuing with the calendar. And in this season, we are looking at the basic unit of the calendar, which is the day, right? And so once we can get the day right, if we can get the day correct, then it follows that we have made one step towards getting to the correct calendar that Yah has revealed. So what does scripture say about the day? When does the day begin? You see, scripture says in Daniel, this is a prophecy, chapter 7, verse 25, it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall weigh out the set-apart ones of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, right? And they shall be given into his hand until a time and the times and the dividing of time. Right. Some scriptures, the word times there is seasons, is festivals. So there is a power that thinks that it can change Yahweh's times, that it can change Yahweh's seasons, that it can change Yahweh's festivals. And to get to the festivals of Yahweh, it is by counting the days, right? And so therefore, it is imperative that we should know the day itself. When does the scriptural day start? So that we may be able to count our days, we may be able to count our seasons of worship, we may be able to count the festivals of Yahweh. So this power, right, which is referred to as Babylon, right? There's ancient Babylon, there is then the end time Babylon, and we know, we've looked at the end time Babylon. There's no one who qualifies the more than 23 aspects identifying who Babylon is, except the Roman Church, the papal system, right? That is identified clearly from scripture. You read Revelation chapter 13, it will give you quite a number of those aspects. And you go to the book of Daniel, it will give you a lot of those aspects. You go to the Revelation 18, Revelation 14, you get all the aspects that can only point to one power, which is Romanism, which is Catholicism. And that is the power that has sought to change Yahweh's times. And by their own mouths, they have said, we changed the Sabbath from the seventh day to the first day. We changed not only the Sabbath, but also even the festivals, right? And so it's not a false accusation. Themselves, they say it, and we know that Babylon, because they look at the moon, right? Moon worship was a very common practice in Babylon. So moon worship guided the worship of the deities of Babylon, and therefore they gaze at the moon and they count their days according to the moon. When they first see the sliver, which is always seen in the night, right, in the evening, right, in the west, and when they start to count their days, and so it's of necessity also that day should start at the time that they observe the sliver. And then there is the secular Babylon, right? The secular Babylon now starts its time at 12 midnight. That's so whether it's secular or religious, Babylon brings about confusion in worship, and at the end of the day, the one who is worshipped is the devil, right? So there is the midnight aspect, which is practiced by the secular system, and then there is the evening or sunset worship, which is practiced in the religious systems of this world. But we want to come and say, according to scripture, worship, or the day in the scriptures, as we have already looked, starts at dawn, right? We've looked at the creation in the previous presentation, and we saw that Yahweh created the heavens and the earth, and the book of Isaiah says the cycle of the earth. So it is, if when you go out there and look, you clearly see a circle, right? You can see that the horizon is cyclical in nature, and that's how Yah created it. And we also told that he puts a dome over this cyclical earth. Right. So scripture says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, right? In this state. And then he says, and there was darkness. We looked at that and we saw that the nature of creation necessitates that within this creation itself, it should be dark because there was no light in the right. But when light came in, we saw that light, and we know that light displaces darkness. So when light came in, then it divided this earth into two portions, right? One which had light, and the other which had no light, which had darkness. So the one that had light was called day, and the one that had darkness was called night. And we also went further and saw that there were two distinct twilight periods that clearly divided these two seasons of the 24-hour cycle, the day and the night. And those twilight seasons are boha, or dawn, right, in Hebrew, or evening, or Arab or Arab in Hebrew. So these two twilight seasons divide the day from the night. And when we went further, we also studied evening, or Arab, and we saw that evening cannot start the day, because for there to be evening, there must be light first, right? So this twilight, the Arab, which is called evening, can only happen when this light recedes and the darkness encroaches into the space. So this particular space will experience what is called the twilight, or what is called evening, right? Where there is a mixture of light and darkness. And that is what is called evening. And evening, therefore, from that understanding, cannot start the 24-hour cycle. Because we saw in Bereshit chapter 1 that the creation activity that was done in the light period determined the number of the cycle, right? In other words, it should have been creation first. And when creation has taken place, then comes evening, this one, and then comes night, and then comes dawn, which is called morning. Dawn. Dawn is the encroaching light mixing with the receding darkness. And then we have boha, or dawn, this twilight comes, and then the day is then decreed as day 1, or day 2, or day 3, or day 4, or day 5, or day 6, or day 7. So at the coming of dawn, the day is numbered, which followed that the activity of creation that took place here, right, is the one that determines the numbering of this whole cycle. Are we clear about that? And so therefore, it is not possible for evening to start the day, because you are going into the night, right? Whereas the creation is already taken place before the night. And therefore, you can't start numbering here. Because when you come to number this day, it is now being numbered as the next day. We shall see from Scripture how Scripture explains it today, when we are going to be reading this coming passage that we want to deal with today. And so, after we had seen all that, that proves that a scriptural day cannot start in the evening, or cannot start at sunset, or cannot start at night, or cannot start at midnight. Scriptural day can only start at dawn, boka, or what we call vuka in Bantu language, right? So today we are continuing with finding witnesses and evidence from Scripture that shows us that the day can only start at dawn. The next witness that I'm going to deal with today is Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 19. But because of context, I want to read with you from verse 10, right? Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 10, and I'll read to verse 22. And it says, "And I perceived that the portions of the Levites had not been given them, for the Levites and the singers that did the work were fled everyone to his field." So Yahweh had said, the Levites and the singers who were also Levites were supposed to get the tithes of Yashra'ah. Right? They were not supposed to work. They were supposed to get the tithes of Yashra'ah, and they will subsist from those tithes. But at this particular time, when people had gone into captivity, remember the 10 tribes had already left long back, and they were already into scattering. And it was only the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of half the tribe of Aharon. So these were the tribes that were taken into captivity in Babylon, and everything had come to a state of not being the correct, of not being what Yahweh had actually instructed them to be. It was all disorganized, and so people were just doing as what they wanted. And so here we see that the Levites, they also wanted food, they also wanted to live. They had to go and start to work on their fields. Then contended I with the rulers and said, why is the house of Elohim forsaken? And I gathered them together and set them in their place. Then brought all Yehuda the tithe of the corn and the new wine and the oil unto the treasuries. And I made treasurers over the treasuries, Shelemiah the priest and the Tzadok the scribe and the Levites, Pedaiah, and next to them was Hanan the son of Zakuri, the son of Matitaniah, for they were counted faithful, and their office was to distribute unto their brethren. So that was the setup. Unlike now, we don't have Levites. People claim the role of Levites. They claim the privileges of Levites, whereas Scripture teaches us that for there being a change of priesthood, it is of necessity also that there be a change of the law, right? So the law of tithes must change because the priesthood has changed. Remember, tithe was attached to the law of priesthood, right? This is very important to understand. Tithe was attached to the law of priesthood, and the priesthood changed from the Levites, from Aharon, to Yahusha, the Melchizedek priesthood. And he himself, Yahusha, says, we all as believers have become priests and kings of the Most High. So there's no one who has got a preserve of priesthood in the current Melchizedek priesthood. All believers are declared as priests of the Most High. So for someone to come and say that they deserve to get the tithes and they don't work and they want to get money to fleece the flock, to fleece the congregation, for someone to come and do that, that is going against the very teachings of Scripture. And so, as of now, this setup is not tenable. This setup is not supported by Scripture. This was a setup during the priesthood of Levi. Verse 14 continues to say, remember me, O my Elohim, concerning this, and wipe not out my good deeds that I've done for the house of my Elohim and for the offices thereof. Verse 15, in those days saw I in Yehuda some trading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bring in sheaves and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. So, quite clear, the context here. Nehemiah is fighting against work, trade that was being done on the Sabbath day, which is supposed to be a set-apart day, a day in which you do not do any work. And so that had long gone in Yashra'ah. Yehuda was doing whatever they so wished on the Sabbath day. Then verse 16, Nehemiah continues to say, there dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and they sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Yehuda and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Yehuda and said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not our fathers thus, and did not our Elohim bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Yeshua by profaning the Sabbath. So verse 19 goes on to say, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set eye at the gates, that they should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath. Beloved, what is clearly shown is that Nehemiah is putting measures to guard the Sabbath so that people will not break it. So we want to look at the seasons that Nehemiah is referring to and how the Sabbath was to be kept, and the sequence of the seasons of the Sabbath, how they unrolled themselves, how they came about. That will help us to determine when the Sabbath starts and when the Sabbath ends. It's very important that we should know these things, because we can never claim to observe, keep, and live the Sabbath when we don't know when it starts and when it ends, lest we find ourselves entering or profaning the edges of the Sabbath by not starting the Sabbath at the right time appointed by the Most High himself. So verse 20 continues to say, so the merchants and the sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. So you've got all these people, the people from Zidon, the people from Tyre, they are coming with their fish and they are selling, and they actually lodge outside the gates at Jerusalem. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath. So they were coming and lodging at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, and that they should come and keep the gates to sanctify the Sabbath. Remember me, O my Elohim, concerning this also, and spare me according to the greatness of thy mercy. Verse 18, all the Levites in the Kodesh city, all the Levites in the Kodesh city were 200 fourscore and four. Fourscore is 80. So 284, all the Levites. Moreover, the porters, Akub, Talmon, and their brethren that kept the gates were in 172. Right. Now, let's get into the matter and discuss Nehemiah 13:19 and see what it reveals to us. The verse reads thus, I'll read it again. And it came to be at the gates of Jerusalem, as it began to be dark, right? As it began to be dark before the Sabbath. And it came to be, at the gates of Jerusalem, as it began to be dark before the Sabbath. So the word dark here is salah. Let's do a word study and see the meanings of the words. It's very important to know the meanings of the words so that you can come to the truth of what the Hebrew wants to reveal to us. You see, quite often the foreigners to the Hebrew would translate in the best way that they do see and understand. But I think if we understand the Hebrew, if we can know the Hebrew meaning of the words, and the context as well, and the culture, right? That would help us to be able to draw the correct meaning of a text. So Salal is Hebrew 67:51. Salal, a primitive root rather identical with Hebrew 67:49 through the idea of hovering, right? So this 67:51 is identical to 67:49 through the idea of hovering, right? Over. Let's compare with 67. Compare it with 67:54, which means to shed as twilight or an opaque object. Something that is opaque is dim, right? There is no light, much light in it, right? It's kind of dim. So Salal is twilight or an opaque object, begin to be dark or shadowing, right? When things start to get dark, right? That's Salal, right? Hebrew 67:49 is also Salal, but the meaning, it adds meaning to the understanding of the text. Here is the meaning, because remember, Hebrews 67:51 and the 67:49, they are identical words, right? With similar meanings, or with related meanings, or with supporting meanings, right? So they come from the same root, and it says here, 67:49 is Salal, a primitive root, properly to tumble down, right? Right. That is to settle by a waving motion, to sink as does the sun, right? Right. We only can get Salal, we only can get a mixture of receding light and encroaching darkness when the sun has sunk, it is sunk, right? When the sun has tumbled down into the horizon, and when we cannot see it anymore, right? That's when we start to experience the mixture of receding light and encroaching darkness, which gives us Salal. Right? That's the time when darkness starts to encroach. And the other word that we spoke about was Hebrew 67:54, which is Tselem, right? Tselem, it comes from an unused root meaning to shed, a phantom, that is figuratively illusion, resemblance. So when scripture says, and Elohim created man in his own image, or Adam had a son set in his own image, right? The word image there is tselem in the Hebrew, right? That is to show a vain or idol or representative figure. That means this twilight, a mixture of receding light and encroaching darkness, happens before the Sabbath. This happens when the sun is sunk into the horizon, the sun has set. Because the verse says, let's go back to the verse again, verse 19. And it came to be at the gates of Jerusalem, as it began to be dark before the Sabbath. Right? Listen to this. For a 24-hour cycle to start, we said it is of a necessity that there be light first, right? So we have dawn here, right? This is the light season of the 6th day, right? The light season of the 6th day is preparation day, right? So that light season starts with dawn. Then we have the light. Now, on the 6th day, sunset will come at some point, right? In other words, the light is receding, the light is going back, the sun has sunk, the sun has set, and so the light is it's shady now, it's opaque, right? And we see darkness encroaching, right? When these two, light, day and night, light and darkness, when these two mix, right? When they mix here, they create this shaded part, which is Arab, which is called evening. Right? Do you see that? So this evening belongs to the 6th day, right? And this evening will usher in the night of the 6th day. And scripture has told us that this darkness that comes, it is before the Sabbath. Very clear. We can't miss that. So the darkness that the scripture is talking about is coming before the Sabbath. So when you are already in this darkness, it's not Sabbath as yet. This darkness is before the Sabbath. Now, the natural progression would be that after this darkness, right, at the end of this darkness, there comes dawn, right, which is this dawn that ushers in the Sabbath cycle, right? The Sabbath cycle will be composed of 2 seasons, the day and the night. Now, when dawn comes, then the Sabbath sets in, or the Sabbath starts, because that darkness was there before the Sabbath, right? Now, the light period of the Sabbath will come to an end when the sun sets here, right? So the red line there is marking when the sun sets, right? So the sun is setting here, right? Sun sets, right? Sun sets here on the red line, right? Now, when the sun sets on the red line, it starts to become opaque or shaded or dark, right? Right? There is a mixture, because also the darkness of the night is encroaching into the same space, right? So there comes a mixture of light also and darkness, creating this boha, or what we call Arab, right? This is Arab, right? This is Arab period. Now, after this Arab period, darkness intensifies and becomes night. Right? Now, the Sabbath is going to end when dawn comes to start a new day. Are you getting it? The Sabbath is going to end here, when dawn comes to start a new day. This is in agreement with Matthew 28. Maybe let me just read that. We're going to deal with these passages also later on, but just to impress on the point, the scripture says, "In the end of the Sabbath," Matthew 28 verse 1. I'm going to read it with you, and I want you to follow as I read that. It says, "In the end of the Sabbath," right? "As it began to dawn," this is dawn, right? "Towards the first day of the week." This is dawn, right? So Sabbath ends at dawn. Right? In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week. So at the end of the week, or at the end of the Sabbath, is the dawning of the first day of the week. And dawn is in the morning, beloved. Dawn is in the morning. Dawn is not at sunset. I want us to understand that. So as it began to be dark before the Sabbath, that's what also Matthew is testifying to. So it began to be dark before the Sabbath. Right? So in other words, night will end with the dawn, and the Sabbath starts with the dawn and end at dawn. So it's a dawn to dawn days in the scriptures. Right. One thing that we also want to take note is that you must also bear in mind the gates were closed every day at night and only opened when the sun was up, hot in fact. Nehemiah 7 verse 3 says, and I said unto them, let not the gates be opened until the sun be hot. So the standard practice was, right, gates were closed in the night, right? Gates were closed every day of the week in the night. So like any other day, this is how it worked. Let me see if I can draw it somewhere. I don't have space, but let me try and see if it can fit here. So any other day, this was the standard practice. Right. So you have dawn here, right? Starting the day, and then the light part ends, and then we have Arab, right? So Arab is a mixture of light and darkness, right? There it is. So this is okay. This is day, right? Which is light. This is dawn or Arab, right? Day. Then dawn. So this is not Arab, but this is a dawn. The beginning of the day. This is dawn, and here this is Arab or Arab, which is evening. Arab, right? Then you have night, right? Then this is the dark part of the day, right? This is the standard practice every day, and then here you have a dawn. So the standard practice is that, right, you have a dawn again here, right? Right. So the standard practice every day was that the gates are shut, right? The gates are shut every evening, right? Sorry, every evening, every night, the gates gets to be shut. And then the gates are not opened until the sun is hot on the next day, right? So the standard practice allowed the gates to be shut and to be opened only when the sun was hot on the next day. But on the Sabbath, this was a slightly different scenario, because the gates were closed, right? Were closed here at the darkness that is taking place here before the Sabbath has taken place, right? So the gates are closed on the dark part of the day of preparation. Are you following? So when they are closed here, we go through the whole night, then dawn comes, then the sun gets to be hot. They are not opened. The gates remain closed, right? And they are closed the whole night of the Sabbath until the following first day of the week, when the sun is already hot. I'm sure someone must be getting something here. So we can see from scripture that the standard practice was of closing the gates at night and being opened when the sun was hot. This was a daily practice. But the power of Nehemiah 13:19 is showing that this darkness precedes the onset of the Shabbat. In other words, the night of preparation day is not yet the Sabbath. It is still preparation day. That is why Yasaf of Arimathea also continued to work until dawn. We are going to look at that. You continue to work until dawn. Right? Even the women, they continue to work until dawn. And only to retire when the Sabbath was approaching in the morning. We are going to look at that as well. So this is the testimony of Nehemiah. I want you to understand that the darkness spoken of by Nehemiah is taking place before the Sabbath. And that Matthew 28 verse 1 tells us that the darkness ends and the dawn comes to mark the beginning of the first day of the week. That's the testimony of Scripture. It's not mine. It's not my thinking or what I'm devising. I want us to make Scripture to be the authority so that we may be restored to true worship and righteous living. Beloved, the time is running out on us. This, what we are presenting, should have been presented many years back. And people should have had time to look at these issues and make a decision to follow Yahweh in his truth. We're going to continue looking at the Sabbath and see what is the testimony of Scripture. When does the Sabbath start? Next, I would like us to look at Lot, another witness, right? Though this was something that was done which is against the word of Yahweh, but it is testifying to us how the days are numbered, how the days are unrolled, how the seasons of the day follow one another. Then we shall be in a position now to correctly identify when the Sabbath starts. Hallelujah.